All right. Hey, how's everybody doing today? We are very excited to bring to you this inaugural episode of the Comics Nuts and Bolts. A little bit of boom right there. And so we are going to be talking about during this show, it's going to be a 1 hour deep dive into different aspects and processes of kind of the comic creation process. And so we will start this week. We're going to start with flatting. And before we really get into all this and introduce my guests, I'm going to have a couple of guests with me today, and we're going to talk about this, and we'll be taking your questions. Before we do that, here is a little bit of branding. Well, that was fun and epic, wasn't it?
It's pretty cool. Pretty neat.
All right. Rodney, why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
Hi, I'm Rodney Fike. I am with Haslam Productions. I am a freelance comic book writer, artist, inker, colorist, pretty much everything. And you can see my books and stuff at Haslam.com. It's HAZZUM.com. Our titles include Peanut Pudding and Jelly, Pitter Patter, Unchained, and Roadkill Rampage, coming very soon. Also, The Art of Rodney Fike on Facebook and Rodney Fike on Instagram as well.
Sweet. All right. We've got another guest coming. He's running a little bit late, but we'll have him introduce himself when he does get in. And so today's topic is flatting. And so I know a lot of over the course of the last couple of weeks, I have had the conversation with people where I've mentioned flats, and people didn't know what I was talking about. Have you ever had that, like where you'll say something comics related, and it seems like people that maybe should know or don't know or whatever, and people seem to always be afraid to ask the question, like, what is that? Can you explain that to me? And so today we're gonna talk about flats. So if you were to explain flats to someone, what would you say?
I would say the base layer, the layer underneath everything that differentiates shapes. The flesh is all one color as opposed to the armor. You need to block that out with flats on a base layer. We used to call it back in the day base toning. So you lay down, anybody that's familiar with coloring, you lay down your base tones and then you build layer per layer per layer. So yeah, I try to define it that way. It's your base layer.
Yeah. And so I'm actually showing a picture of it right now. And so I used to call it blocking, but it's basically this thing called flat. So it's kind of like every colorist. It's kind of the beginning stage of coloring. It's really kind of the coloring book part. And most people, you'll see that they do a thing like they'll have line art. And so what you see on the screen right now, this is line art. This is for a character named Rev, and I've got a trading card. This was for a trading card image that I was doing for him for the hybrids line. And so this is some line art that I got, and then basically you're going to start from there into coloring. And so that coloring stage it can be a little tedious and monotonous, but what people mostly see when they color is they're looking at something a little more finished, like more of a finished product. And I have something here. I have a couple of things here to also show people. So let me just open this up. And so we're going to just run through what some of this stuff is and what a good flat is, what a bad flat is. And just open that up. So I've got two images here. And so this is a flat image where the flats I had started the flats on this one. Didn't want to do it. Don't like doing this. And so I paid somebody else to do it, right? Oh, hey, Rob's here. So let's go ahead and get Rob in on the show. Hey, Rob, how you doing today?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good. You want to introduce yourself?
Rob? I'm Rob Roy. So
yeah. Go ahead and tell everybody about yourself and kind of who you are and your experience with comics.
Okay. I self-published way back in high school. That was a long time ago. but over the past few years, trying to get back into the flow of things. A pencil, I ink, I do flat so far. I'm not full on doing color until I get more comfortable with the digital thing, but working on trying to get some projects going.
Yeah. So we've got Sarah in here. She's saying hello to everybody. So everybody say hi to Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. How we doing?
All right. She's doing good. She said this is some nice artwork, and oh wow, what a difference. Just wait for it. Phil Lockler's also here saying afternoon, y'all. So we're gonna try to make flats sexy today. Okay, I kind of know that flats are not the most exciting thing. We're gonna try to just jazz this thing up. And so I'm gonna go ahead and put this screen back in here. So we're gonna look at. I'm kind of showing some people stuff. So this is kind of a version of a flat. Not all the flats are done, right? So basically, you're gonna go in and you're gonna do something that's gonna look kind of similar to what we did here with the Rev image, where I paid someone to come in and do some flats. And basically, and this is what Rob does. Rob does some of this stuff for me.
Right.
Comes in, and then you add a base color. And now when you're flatting, do you often, is it important to get the right color tone for what the character is?
I prefer to. I mean,
You prefer to?
I think it makes work easier for whoever's doing the colors after to have things as close. I know ultimately it doesn't matter; it can be any color, but I feel like it's making it a little easier on the colors.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, it's more force of habit. I've always done it that way, so that's just my go-to thing. So yeah. I agree with Rob.
So yeah, the flatter actually did that here for me here with this image. And so as you can see, we've got now here's one thing that sometimes some of my flatters will do and they won't do is they will separate the background from the foreground. Do you find as now, Rodney, you do a lot of coloring too. You'll do the rendering on top of that. So on a flat, do you think that does it help you to have the foreground and background filled in on separate layers?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything that can help you select spaces quicker helps. So yeah, I definitely do that.
Cool.
And it definitely helps.
Yeah. So basically you start out with like this flat image and it's kind of like coloring in the lines, right? I think it reminds me of when I was a kid. And I think that, this is really fun for some people, and then it's not so fun for other people. But then once you move from that,
it can be tedious.
It can be tedious. Especially, I've got a couple of really complicated pages that I hope to show here before the time is out, so that people can see, hey, so this is kind of the mix of it. So a flat basically is you're taking your line art and you're sticking some colors in there, and those colors are then going to be taken by a colorist and they're going to be rendered. And so that's what I did here with this. So we had something that was similar to a flat where all the white areas were one color and all these things were the other color. And what happened was we take this by piece, and then you take these pieces out and you start to render them. And since I've already done this image before, let's just kind of walk this through for some people. Meredith is here, and Meredith says, wouldn't it be easier for all layers or items that require different colors to be separate? How would you answer that, guys?
Sometimes they are. When I've done stuff, like metal, sometimes I will put metal on a separate layer just so I don't accidentally do something on a layer I'm not supposed to be doing it on. But it just depends on what you're used to and your process.
Yes.
Yeah. So on the person, because sometimes that might be faster for one person, but for another person, it might feel like it's too much.
Yeah.
So the way I would normally do, since I do some coloring and I do like some of this rendering with Photoshop and things like that, one of the things that I do is I use the flat to create my layers of color. Is what I do. So like I will go in here and choose my selector tool. And so you can probably see my selector tool moving around on the screen. And I'll just select that background like that. And I will give it controls, copy and a paste. And so now what I've done is I've just now got my background on a layer. And then I'll go back in, turn this on, and if I want, and it actually saves files, like the size of the file, if it's all one layer, and that way it transfers easily, because you can easily separate this out into different layers that you need to. And I typically do that with coloring. So maybe you guys can fill this. Rodney, I know you can do this too. Rob, I know that you do a little bit of this, but you said you don't get into it too much yet.
Yeah.
So as you're selecting these colors, do you prefer to color them in one layer or in multiple layers, each item or each color?
It really, I've kind of been doing it the same way for so long, that I generally find myself doing it all on one, just because that's my kind of default thing in my mind that I do. In areas like real intricate pages and stuff where there's a lot of mechanics or computers or stuff like that, yeah, I will separate them out. But typically I just revert back to my old habits and, it's all on one. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
I'm actually going to pull it.
I do it the way you have it set up right there, actually, because you can still magic wand the jacket, you can magic wand the shirt,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there is some precedence to have it separated, because I will typically do that. Like I will magic wand those things. So I will choose all the color that I want, and do the shift thing, and then copy and paste that. And then now I've got just the shirt. And there's this thing that I'll do, which we get into. This is more nuts and bolts for something else, but the lock transparency, so that I can color right across it with a pen or something, and it doesn't affect the non-colored area. It only affects what is already got something on it. So as you can see how that works. See, like that. So that's just for the viewer. So that's kind of what you would do. And then you want to not do any of that, because that's not how you color a page at all. So that's kind of the typical aspect of what a flat is. And so there's a few things that I know that I look for when I look for a flat. And this is why I use Rob, because Rob is really detailed about this. And we'll kind of spread in here. This was not Rob. This is not something that Rob did, but as you'll see, we'll kind of bring into these areas. The hat is colored, and that is typically the color of that guy's hat. The hair is colored. There's even this little color right in there, for the light, for the eye. And here's where the real detail starts coming in, like the belt and the buckle and those kind of things start coming in. Now, this is not a super detailed piece, but I found, and correct me if you look at this differently, but I find that the more detail or attention that the flatter puts into the work, the more they're worth money to me. That's
that's they're doing a lot of the quote unquote heavy lifting, because most of the game in coloring is separating stuff out, from each other. So yeah, and I'm that way. I'm that anal guy that gets in and gets that belt buckle of cold gray, and then I'll go in and get that the actual leather belt of warm gray, and I'm goofy that way. So I guess that's good to some people, because people really appreciate that.
Yeah. The other thing about flats, if people are doing flats, if you've never flatted before, if you're thinking about doing flats, and one of the things that we look at is you can have this one layer. And here's why, for me, the main color, like the color doesn't really matter. It can help. It can speed things up if it's the same throughout the book. But there's this thing called the paint bucket. You can see that paint bucket on the screen. Mm-hmm. I can go in and decide to change the color of the shirt to red. Changes the look and feel of the whole thing altogether. It might look more like an orange to the screen. I've got two different screens going, so it's like, well, that color looks a little. It looks a little warmer. I think the StreamYard's making a little warmer than what what the actual colors are. So.
Now he's Johnny Storm.
Yeah, it looks like Or you can go right back to that green color, and or a green color. And so you can go in and just play around with the color schemes of things. What would it look like if he had on a gray, a darker gray shirt, or even a white shirt, wearing a white t-shirt underneath it? What would it look like if you decided to wear a bright pink hat, and he was wearing these lime green pants. And so you can just go through and kind of play with all of those many aspects. I don't like the background that color, so let's just throw it in here and make it a gray background so it looks better. Or, hey, I just want a black background. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can do with. Now that's starting to look really ugly. But it allows you to start playing with color palettes and things like that and looking through those things. So the flat, a good solid flat is important. I think the other thing that's important is when you start to zoom in on the lines is how closely does it follow those lines. I've gotten flats back that they did not color inside the line. And it was pretty frustrating. There's a lot of little party foul, a lot of little edges over here, over there that just kind of got out of the way, and it's like, man, that looked really, really bad. And so this and right here.
The funny thing about that is when you're flipping through a comic book, and I guess it's because I color, I look at that stuff stands out to me like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. Now, Meredith is saying this. She says that the Magic Wand tool is great as long as you have big areas for one color. But when there's a lot of lines, you have to fill in a lot of small areas, and that gets tedious. And it does really get tedious. And that kind of brings me into kind of something else with flats. And I'm going to show this
around.
There is a workaround, and let's talk about that workaround. What's the workaround, Rod? Rodney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Rodney.
I personally would go in and I would protect the black, and just so the only thing you can color is the white, and go in and do it that way. And that really speeds the process up, really saves time. Now, again, like I said before, there's 100 ways to do the same thing in Photoshop. So it's just how you do it. But that's how I would do it.
All right. Well, let's talk about, go ahead, Rob, you answer this question, and then we'll talk about some of the ways to do it.
What was that? No, what he said.
What he said? Okay. All right. So let's talk about some of the ways to do it. All right. We'll maybe even show. I'm using Photoshop. So when you guys flat, what are some of the programs that you like to use to color?
Photoshop.
Yeah, Photoshop.
I've got Clip Studio, but I haven't tried doing it. I don't even want to try yet in Clip Studio. Yeah. So I like Photoshop totally for it because I'm so used to it.
Yeah, I've got Photoshop. I had Clip Studios, but like Rob said, if you've got Photoshop and you're used to using it, I just use it. And I've got Procreate as well, and I dig it. It's very similar to Photoshop, but I revert back to what I know to avoid the learning curve, I guess.
Okay. So Photoshop seems to be kind of that basic thing, and there are some other programs that's out there. And maybe if some of you that are watching have used something else, maybe you might want to just pop in the comment like, hey, I've tried this, or what about that? I will say that probably Microsoft Paint is not the best thing to use. Really, the thing that you're looking for is you might be able to see over here on the far side of the screen down here at the bottom is these layers. And the layers is what you're looking for. Being able to do that, I think, is the most important thing, to do the layers. So in your process, and just kind of walk me through, like if you're trying to coach me to do some color, do some things right now, obviously what I've got is the background, and I've got some flats that I've started. And so I've just created this ugly color background. And this is how I like to do it, or how some people have taught me to do it. And I've seen other people do it. They create this really ugly background. So you're not doing it on white, because what we found is if you're doing it on white and you're using a lighter color, you can miss it. Like you can miss some of the things that are there. But if you've got like this god awful mustard color, or some other like really obnoxious color, you're going to want to cover that up. And so it kind of helps.
Yeah, the white's really hard on your eyes. It strains your eyes a lot too. So try to get rid of that white as quick as you can.
Yeah. So I'm going to do it like, say I do it this way, and or I've seen people do it this way, where they use that background, as a way to kind of offset the contrast while they're doing the coloring. As we saw here with Rev, all of the flats are one layer here, and so they're not layered out. Rob, you answer this. When you are flatting, how do you do it? Like what is your process? So you're in Photoshop. What's your process? How do you start this out?
What I do is what you've done there with that ugly color. Select the whole thing, dump that color in there, and then with the lasso tool, I just start selecting stuff from like the largest objects, filling those in to the smallest ones, working my way down that way.
Okay. So you actually use the lasso tool.
Yeah.
So you would use, and do you do that on a separate layer?
I usually do it on the same, but
Okay. So you use the same layer to do that then.
Yeah.
So you would go in and select, you got to use the right tool. So you would go in and select something like,
well, I'd select that whole boot and then,
oh, the whole boot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you select the whole boot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do this fast because and then you fill that in.
Right.
With whatever color that would be. So here's the thing, especially with this character, he's got a different, like the arm piece here is the same color as that boot behind it. How would you go about doing that? Because if we just came in and I don't use the selector tool. I actually use the brush tool.
Okay.
So I'll deselect and I'll use the brush tool.
Just like with his skin, anything in there that's the same color, I'm going to go ahead and select all those, shift select all those sections.
Okay.
And just paint bucket them all at the same time.
This is why I don't flat. You see this, guys? Because I'm like, and just go. I'm like already bored with flatting.
Yeah.
So you select it. So now, but when it comes to rendering, like I've actually had people, instead of giving everything the same color, what they'll do is they will take things and differentiate those colors individually so that it's easier to select, make it the color that I want it, and then render it.
Yeah.
Because with this, I still now have to go in there and select that, so this whole boot is gray. But now I know that that it's also gray for this piece right here. And I'm not going to color inside the lines. So you guys are both consummate professionals. You'll just have to deal with my my haste for the sake of demonstration. So some of the flats, like when you see this, and this bow and arrow is also a gray, so like it'll just be a darker gray, and so you'll start filling that in, and obviously you go in with great care and detail to get inside of the lines, and so we will just attempt to do that here. Nope, already failed. Do not hire me to do your flats. I will render like no one's business, but I do not like to do flats. So, which is why Rob gets a job from me, right? But what I've had is I've seen people in the past, they will just choose like really contrasting colors. And they might color this in this color. And it's not the right color, obviously.
Right.
But it stands out against the other color, so it's easy to select. It's easy to start then to manipulate. And then what I can do then is go in, magic wand that, select copy, then choose the color it's supposed to be, like that, and then I can work from there. Those kind of things. So that's something that some flatters do. What's your method for doing things like that? Is it have you ever done anything like that on the more complex pieces?
Yeah. What I would do is, since those guys all have the same costume, I would take like the guy in the middle. His boots are 50% gray. So everything that's gray on that is 50% gray, and the guy closer to the camera, he's going to be a 70% gray. And so I'm as well as flatting, I'm pulling them apart from each other for easy selection on the next step. So that's how I would approach that.
Right. Same as me. I do different shades of gray. I'd never throw the pink in there. It would drive me crazy.
Again, I don't typically do the flats. I'm hosting the show, guys. So Meredith says that she loves Photoshop. She's tried Canva, but frustrated with the limited tools. So I rejected it fairly quickly. And I've noticed that too. In the comic book advocates is asking why it's all one color, and that's because the flats aren't done yet on this one. We're actually
it's a work in progress.
Yeah, we're filling in the colors on that, showing how those things work. And so to go back into this now, here is one thing that the reason why I bring that up is because here is a page that was flatted for me, and as I was going in here, these colors are great, by the way. They're very similar to the colors that I want. But what was happening is when I would go in and select, and I don't know if this is one of the pages that will do it. Yeah, see this, if you see that those lines, it selected this gray rock in front. And so the colors were so close and so similar that it decided to select all of those colors. Yeah. And so even though they were different, they're not different enough. And so that's part of, I think, with flatting, it's not necessarily always picking the right color, but it's picking a nice contrast of colors so that you can kind of get through that process. So what I did then, if you just deselect that, I went through and decided that I wanted this kind of like a rock color, and use the bucket tool to fill in all of those. And now here, the thing is, you didn't see it before because there was 2 different colors on these rocks. And so you see that fills in. But they've done, obviously, the flatter has done 2 different colors. They look similar enough. So if you're going to select it, it's going to select the whole rock as one. But if you actually use it's only going to fill up to that color value. And you can't, the select tool will grab that other color value, whether it's there or not. But this has actually created 2 different, and it's easier to see if you look at, hey, these are 2 different colors on those rocks.
Your magic wand tolerance, I see, is already down at 1.
Yeah.
Huh. So those are pretty daggone similar.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, I don't use I don't use a high tolerance for my magic wand. I don't tolerate much, guys. All right, so we've established that you need to use something that is going to give you layers. You've got working in layers is essential, I think, when it comes to things like this. Now, and we've all used Photoshop. Now, what kind of other tools do you use? So obviously this is all done on like a digital format. I'm using a stylus pen with I can't really show it, with a graphics tablet, a smaller one. What are some of the tools that you use?
You can go first, Rob, because you're all going to laugh at me when I tell you.
What I'm using right now, and I got to say I totally hate it, is one of these old ones that you actually have to look down or look up while you're drawing. I don't like that. You're drawing this and you're looking up. It takes some getting used to with the pen that goes with it. But yeah, if I get a new iPad, that's what I'll be using.
So it is fully capable of doing the job, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It just takes more getting used to your looking ahead and drawing down here.
Yeah.
But that's what I have to use right now, and it works. So.
Yeah. Rodney, go for
it. Okay. I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but what the hell? I still use a mouse.
It would be even harder. So that's a good job.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for 25 years. So, and I'm left-handed, but I use my right hand.
Oh my.
So, yeah, I've been doing it for so long that it's just, and I have an iPad, but it's just, sometimes production is, more important. And I just go back to what I know, and I'm quicker with it, and I'm efficient with it. So, but yes, I am working on, going to the pencil tool and all that. But yeah, currently, yes, it's all mouse. So now y'all know my dark, dirty secret.
Oh, that's actually kind of encouraging. It kind of leads me into like the second half of our conversation today. So really, I wanted to talk about what flats were and how, kind of like some of the process behind it, because I really want us to give people an opportunity that might want to get into comics or get into into some part of the aspect of production, but they're like, I'm not quite there yet with coloring, or I'm not quite there yet with art, or there's what can I do to be a part of that creative process? And I've had a lot of people tell me that flats are a good way to get involved. And so, Rob, you mentioned something a little bit ago about iFlat Comics when you introduce yourself, iFlat Comics, because in this and that. So, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Like I said, the easy, if you're wanting to become a colorist or do that kind of work, the easiest thing to start with is the flats. You can be doing flats while you're learning all the things about rendering and shading and effects and things like that. But flats are really easy to do. And if I back up, the tablet that I am using, I mean, it's perfect for flats. I was just kind of referring, if you're drawing or inking, I hate it for that. But for flats, it's just as easy as anything else. So.
Meredith says that's what I was going to say, Rodney. I know 4-fingered typists who are super fast. Why not color with a mouse? And I think that's kind of the thing, right? It's you use the tools at your disposal, and you really make the tools work for you. So Rodney uses a mouse, and Rob uses a standard graphics tablet, and I use what they call a display tablet, and some other people do that too. And it doesn't really matter what tool you're using as long as the result is right. And the basic result is color inside the lines, and keep it on a layer outside of the line art. I have actually gotten I'm going to throw the screen back up here. And I'm going to do, this is like the cardinal sin, I think. Like, this is like the worst thing you could do. But I've actually gotten a flat back like this. So this is the regular line art. This is black and white. And I have gotten it back where someone has taken their brush and they've hit the multiply feature on the brush. And you guys know what that is, right?
Yeah.
It means that it doesn't color anything that's black, but it will color all the white. And they have colored the line art. Wow. Like that. So when I turn off the line art, I turn off the colors too. Yeah. Just if you're going to flat, you're going to get into it. Don't do that. That's a sin.
That's just inexperience.
Yeah. And inexperience. And so flats need to be on a separate layer. So let's talk about, though, if you're going to do it, so the tools don't really matter. It's really the end result that matters the most with those things. So how did you guys, first off, how did you start into comics? And Rob so Rodney, you do multiple things with comics. Go and tell me about the other things that you do with comics.
Well, I write and create. I draw. I've hand lettered. What else? I've done inks. I've done background inks. Colored. I mean, pretty much everything that there is to do, aside from actually printing the books, I've pretty much done. So yeah, pretty well rounded.
So what was the first thing that you did with comics? Like, was it like, hey, I got in as a flatter, I got in as a penciler, inker. What did you get?
Oh, no, I jumped into the deep end of the pool with zero experience and made every mistake you could possibly make. So, because I was young and fearless, and I've always loved comics, and me and some friends from high school created a superhero team in art class, and we got into doing that. And then we got into college, and my one buddy went into the Marine Corps, and we all kind of went our separate ways, and I kind of held everything together, and I created the story with the characters that we created in high school. And then when he got out of the Marine Corps and we got back together, we did this book. We went to New York Comic-Con way back when, and was meeting all of the people that were doing Ghost Rider and all this stuff, and they were on one side of the table and I was on the other side of the table, and it just struck me as to what's different between him and me. Why is he on that side of the table and I'm on this side of the table? Because he sat down and did it, which is what we were doing. We were just a year away. So a year later, we were back in New York as guests selling our books. So that's how we started. And our first issue wasn't proportionately sized. So we had to do it magazine style because it was a 56-page book, and we were not going to redraw 56 pages of artwork.
Wow.
We were laughed at, but when people read the book, they really enjoyed it and they really liked it. And then issue 2 was standard size. Actually, the first 17 pages were the same size as issue 1, but I went in and I stripped it all down and jimmied it all around and filled in the negative space with graphics and stuff, and made it proportionately sized. And then the second half of the book was drawn at the right size, and we ended up doing 5 more issues that way, regular size. And then when the comics, we went through that, we published 6 issues, and then we started coloring books for other people, and we started making more money at that, and that's how I got started coloring.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go to Rob, and then I have some other questions for you guys. So Rob, tell us about how you got started.
Okay. Long time ago. In high school. This is like back in 80 something. Okay. Again, I lived in Michigan. I had a lot of friends who were drawing and doing small press comics back then, and I kind of jumped right in and did that too. We kind of worked on each other's stuff. But back then, it was like you had to paste all your stuff up, do all the hand lettering,
Yep.
Staple all your books together yourself and everything. Yeah, so did that for a while, and then of course after high school, we all kind of lost touch, and life happens, and I've been past decade or so just trying to get back into it. Having drawn all the while, the great thing is social media is, if we had that when we were in high school, yeah.
Yeah.
So Rob, you actually flat for that's a job. You do that. You get paid to flat. You get flatter credits on books and stuff. How did you get started into flatting?
Well, it was one of the steps of the process that I felt like I could do myself on my own work. So if you know Kurt Michael Russell, he's a colorist. He's got a lot of videos on YouTube, and that's where I learned the digital process of it. Really good resource. So
yeah, it is. Yeah. So now, Rodney, do you see the value? Do you use flatters for any of your projects, or do you typically do that yourself?
I do it myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it because you just want to do it yourself, or is it for me, if I flat, it's because I'm broke and I can't afford to pay someone to flat it? But that's just me.
Yeah, well, no, that's being honest. Yeah, and it's the same reason for me. And I can do it so quickly. It would be nice to have somebody else do it, and it's kind of a control thing, well, if I flat it, then I can do this and I can do that, and I can set it up the way I want it, and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, it's just the way I do it. I keep saying that, but if it works, and I'm so quick at it, just keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, if you guys were going to give people some advice on how to start out a career with flatting, or hey, this is what you need to know, if you're really serious about doing this and you want to try to get in there, what are some of the things some piece of advice you would tell them, whether, programs to look at, software to look at, videos, resources to go to, books to look at, what would be your advice to them?
You can go first, Rob.
Okay. Well, like I said, one resource I would definitely recommend, I think his YouTube channel is Color with Kurt, okay? He's very thorough, and it gives you a really good general overview of things. I'm even watching his stuff on rendering because I'm kind of wanting to foray into that. I'm just a little less confident in it so far. Yeah, but I think most of Photoshop is, of course, the easiest because we're used to using that.
Yeah.
I like Clip Studio for penciling and inking, but I'm going to use Photoshop for that. So,
yeah.
But like you said, the tools and everything, whatever's comfortable for you, you'll get the job done.
Yeah, and I would echo that. God, I can't imagine having YouTube 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Kids don't know how lucky they have it.
Back in my day.
Yeah. Back in WW2. No, it's just YouTube is just it's priceless. Anything that you need to know, it's there, and Photoshop. Yeah. It's worth that subscription because it's what you kind of do everything in, and so that's my advice. Back when we get to the point where we can start going to shows and stuff, go to shows, talk to creators and stuff, because a lot of guys and girls, they have their laptops with them at shows. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and bring your laptop. I always tell kids this at shows: where's your artwork? You're here at a comic book show. Why didn't you bring anything? And so they pull it up on their phone. But yeah, interact with other people of like minds and just be a sponge.
Yeah. So let's get down to, we said, Rodney, sometimes we don't hire a flatter because of the money, right? So let's talk about that. If someone's serious about, hey, I want to make some extra money on the side, and I want to try to do that with comics. I want to try to break my way into the industry, and I want to build some kind of a reputation with that. And maybe I think flatting is something that I can do. I don't have to be able to render beautifully like some of these other guys, because some of that stuff can get really complicated. And Meredith actually asked, she said, where's my mouse? There it is. She says that, thanks, I believe I understand flatting now. So what is rendering now? Is that the next lesson? And we will get more into rendering with some colorists that, talk about their styles, because there's multiple different styles of rendering. And basically what the rendering is taking the flat and making it look with light highlights and dark shadows and those kind of things, and adding all the effects and glowy bits and all those little fun little flares and things like that. So if someone is interested in doing this for a living, and they get themselves a really nice mouse like Rodney uses, or some kind of a graphics tablet like Rob uses. Rodney, do you have a favorite mouse?
No, the one that works. I usually go through a mouse every 2 years. But yeah, it doesn't matter. It's
from all those flats, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's say they're wanting to do it, and they're like, hey, Rob is making some money doing it, and other people, and if you look, people are like, if you do the search on the web, you'll find that people are actually like, they're professional flatters. They flat for a living. And some of these people don't get their credits in the book. Like, they might work on some really, really high caliber books, but they never get their credits in there. And oftentimes they're an unsung hero, because the colorist is the one that gets all of the credit. But the flatter is the one doing the tedious work for the colorist. But let's say, hey, they want to try to get into the field doing that. What is a fair price that they should expect to be able to get at the different levels of their career in flatting, Rob? Well, I'll ask you, since that's what you do.
Well, even if I were highly skilled, 8 to 10 a page just seems like I wouldn't go any higher or much lower than that. But I mean, I personally wouldn't even go higher than 10. That's me.
Okay. And that's, I have met a person who went 15 a page, and so I threw him a bone because, I do that sometimes, and they were the ones that didn't color in the lines. Yeah, they were trying to get
detailed page, maybe 15, but generally speaking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do want to show this off, and I want to get your guys' impression on this. I'm just going to actually just do the full page here. And this is a flat, and this, I saved the flat because it looks so because it's great for things like this when I want to show people. This is a cover that I am currently still working on for someone, but this is a wraparound cover, and so I actually paid quite a bit for this flat because it's a lot that's in there. So he got $20 for this, basically $10 a page. You know, probably could have gone a little bit more for him. But here, let's just kind of zoom because there's all these faces. And this guy is on. I might even tag him in the comments. This is a guy named O'Day, is his last name. But as you can see, these were not the colors that I end up with. Like, she has pink hair. See my cursor there? She has pink hair.
Yeah.
But she can't have the same color hair as this guy because it's you know, all that kind of stuff. So this guy went through and in about a day did the flatting on this for me. And you can see the level of detail that he used.
Yeah, I mean, he's got all the individual gems, different colors. The guy's stripe going across his helmet was a different color. Yeah, he's even got different colored eyes. And, you know, easily selectable colors.
Yes. Probably one of the best jobs of a flatter that I had ever seen. So I saved it for conversations like this when someone was like, hey, check out this. Now, this art was done by a guy named Darren Brady and D. Brady Art. You can check him out. He is a fantastic artist. And the flats were done by a friend of mine, O'Day, who gets a lot of work from me too. So I kind of share between Rob and this guy, and you can see why. I mean, there's such great care that was taken into that, and that's when I think that flatting goes from a job into an art form, and it can become as much a part of the art as. And I'm going to move back to this view.
Yeah, that's what I would call highly detailed.
Yeah, highly detailed, and that's someone who says, "Look, I'm a flatter, but I'm going to be the best flatter that I can be." And that's what I would consider like kind of next level stuff, where everything is within the lines. It is perfectly done. And it just absolutely took the most amount of care that they possibly could to get it done. And for me, that's an art form. That is an art form. And Meredith says that's nice work, lots of detail to fill in. Yes. And he did a great job. And so you absolutely can use that as an art form. And so do you guys want to speak to that a little bit about how any level of working on a comic, there's no throwaway skill, in my opinion. You guys want to speak to that?
To me, when I look at that and I see that, I think, wow, one, his level of detail and devotion to his craft. Not everybody is going to care that much, and they're going to look for the shortcut. But to see, and when you zoomed in on it, and I could see all the different colors and the jewels and stuff like that. That you're right. I mean, that in itself is an art form, and seeing that tells you who you're working with, because if he's willing to go all that balls out on something like that, then you know you got somebody that you want on your team for as long as you can keep him on your team, because that is impressive.
That is impressive. So, Rob, do you have anything to add to like how flatting can be an art form?
Yeah, like I said, if you have a high attention to detail in any step of the art process, I mean that's the important thing. You know, I mean, in some ways it ends up saving time, and it can even end up saving money.
Yeah,
the detail.
Yeah. You know, as the person that's coloring that, go ahead.
See, from something like that, it definitely is an art form in and of itself, and it's fun. If you like tedious, detailed stuff, it's fun. So I like it.
Yeah, Rodney, were you going to say something?
No, just what he just said. It's if you're into that, it's. I mean, I enjoy it. I guess maybe that's why I do it. And I'm a glutton for punishment. So But yeah, it's definitely an art form.
Yeah. Now I don't enjoy doing that. I'll be the first one to say I actually hire a layout artist because I don't even like doing that. I feel like that's tedious. I just like to draw pictures.
Right.
And I want someone else just tell me what to draw and I will draw it, because that's what I like to do. But when I see something like that, as the artist, that the colorist that's rendering this out, the amount of work that he put in actually makes my work easier, because now I don't have to go in and it encourages me to add extra levels of detail that I wouldn't have probably normal if someone would just flat that out, because he took the time to do it. Well, I'm going to take the time to do it. I'm going to put the effort in to make this look like it's going to be the best piece that it can be. I know what Darren is going to be using this piece for. So it's important that it's done right and it's done well. And, that it looks the part. And all of that still it's made possible by those base colors and just the stuff. Now, obviously some of these colors are going to change. We're going to, we've started to change all of those as we've rendered it out, but it's been able to pick out and to dissect and be able to do like, okay, I'm going to render this little piece here now and that. And so as it starts to take shape, it looks really cool. And it's because of all of that care and that attention to detail, it allows for the creative process to continue on with someone else. And there's a lot of different areas in comics that are like that. In our last few minutes, just to say, there's a lot of teams. There's a value in working with specialized people, and let's talk about that for a second. So, Rodney, you can do everything yourself. Rob, I know that you can do most of the aspects yourself. Like you said, okay, I can probably do a comic from script to art to colors to letters and the whole thing and put it out, except for printing it. But we know that, so talk about the value of adding a team member that's a specialized person, like a flatter or an inker or a letterer or something like that.
In the end, to have the product the way you want it, there's always somebody who's better at a certain thing than I am, and if I could bring them on board for that aspect of it, it's good for them, but it's also good for the book.
Yeah, I agree. Oh wait, he's still talking.
Oh, you're good. Go for it, Rodney.
Oh, I thought he was. It's the delay from. Okay, I agree. I can do it all, but there are certain stories that I do that my artwork's not conducive to, so I want to hire a different artist to do that. And if I hire the right person, that project just sings and it just shines, and it's so much easier to do. Going from getting the right letterer is paramount, because bad lettering can ruin a project. Mm-hmm. And when you find that inker and that letterer and that graphic designer, it's worth its weight in gold, and you want to keep that person around as long as you can, because it's one less thing you have to worry about.
Yeah. I've also noticed this about finding good people that are specialized in certain areas to be a part of your team. So on a thing like this, in order to flat that whole thing would take a long time to do. Like that requires a certain amount of man hours to do that. And then to render it requires the same amount of man hours. And what I've noticed a lot with specialized teams, and this is why people, I think, use flatters, and this is something that if anyone's still watching, like what they, this is why the use of a flatter is usually in there, because it can speed along the process. Some guys can render pages they do like 80 pages a week. I think one guy was saying, I do 80 pages a week. And I'm like, that's an insane amount. And I'm like, but as you hear him talk about the process, he uses a flatter on everything he does. I personally can draw 9 pages of comics a week if I don't have other things going on. But that's only if I use a layout artist who's already done the tedious work for me. I can go in and I can produce that amount of work a week. And using specialized people in the comics industry, it's like this. It allows you to focus on the thing that you're good at and hand things off. So let's say, for instance, we've got a person who's done the layouts. that layouts for a book that's been scripted can get done and be approved by the editor before the penciler and inker gets a hold of it. The penciler can pencil the page. As soon as he's done penciling page 1, he hands that over to the inker. The inker inks page 1 while the penciler is drawing page 2. And so by the time the penciler is done with page 2, page 1 is done and it's off to the flatter. And so it moves from the flatter to the colorist. And by that, you've got this kind of assembly line of work that's happening. And so a book that would take one person a couple of months to complete can take a team of 4 or 5 people just a matter of weeks to complete. And I think that's really where the value of these of these specialized things come from. Would you guys agree to that, or do you have like anything to add to that?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up for me. So
yeah,
totally.
Yeah, I ditto.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I think it's cool to be a part of that. And I think one of the most interesting things about being a flatter is you don't have to have this really super specialized equipment. You can do it with a mouse and a laptop. As long as you've got Photoshop, and it doesn't even have to be a newer version of Photoshop. It just has to be a version of some sort of software where you can save it in layers. And so kind of the last thing, we've got like 4 minutes to talk about it here. It's now that we've kind of done this, we understand the value of that. People are going to ask about file types and file size. It's really important to do that. So Rodney, what file types and file sizes do you like to get from, do you like to work with?
I use TIFFs.
Okay.
Just because they're the most, they retain the most detail. And as far as sizes go, it varies. I used to work at 11 by 17, but I've kind of gone down to a 9 by 12. I've proportionately shrunk down an 11 by 17 template onto a 9 by 12, and I do everything at that size. So I can't speak to the exact size of it, but that's what I do.
Somewhere in there, huh?
Yeah.
Now, do you like a certain DPI or DPI for those that may not know?
Oh yeah, 300 DPI. Yeah. That's all you need now.
Yeah.
If you work at full scale, yeah. 11 by 17, 300 DPI.
Yeah, that's typically what I work at, and I also use a TIFF because a TIFF is it's usable with more pieces of software. You can open up in different things like that. So, Rob, anything like suggestions on that? You've been working with a lot of people over the years. What are some of the things that you've seen from a flatter's perspective?
I'm the same. I prefer to be a TIFF, 11 by 17, 300, at least 300 DPI. And I mean, like you say, you don't really need to go higher than that for anything. You know, maybe some inkers would do 600 or something like that, but 300, yeah. JPEG, one that's.
Don't never send me a JPEG. If you send me a JPEG, I'm going to reject it. I can do a Photoshop format since I'm working in Photoshop, but TIFF works in any. It can be saved as a layered image, and it works in any program that I use. So I really find that's really significant. So when you're choosing software, make sure that it can be something that you can save in a TIFF probably in that. So, well, we've just got a couple minutes here left. So why don't you guys, once again, just tell the audience where they can find you, what you're working on, and where they can find you. And we'll start with Rob since he is at the bottom.
Okay, I'm developing a graphic novel, tentatively titled Hotspur. I've got a Facebook page right now. It's Rampant Studios. I'm working on a website and things like that. But that's generally where I'm at, and on Instagram, it's RobRoy01.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, I'm Rodney Fike, and you can get all of our comics at Hazzum.com. That's HAZZUM.com, and also on the Art of Rodney Fike on Facebook, and Rodney_Fike on Instagram.
Awesome. definitely everyone check those guys out. And I don't know if you can tell by looking at this, by this episode, but flatters are a certain chill kind of people. So if you are a chill kind of person, really laid back, you might make a perfect flatter and a great addition to somebody's creative team. So if you have any other additional questions, find these guys, follow them from their things, and make sure that you're asking them any questions and pick their brains. I'm sure they're happy to help you along the way and along your journey. So I've been Luke Stone, and this has been the Comics Nuts and Bolts. And so we've talked about the kind of deep dive into flatting. Next week we'll attack a different topic, and we will have some guests who specialize in those areas, and we will start to talk about those nuts and bolts and the detailed dive into those. So thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Same time, same place. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.